Hello everyone and welcome back to Scholars. I'm Gaurav. I'm here to take you through the ancient history for civil services examination. Let's continue with our today's lecture, that is the Vedic age. In the last lecture, we studied about the social, political and the conflicts ridden in the Rigvedic age. We'll continue from there in this lecture and we'll study about the religious, economics and some other aspects of Rigvedic age. So let's get started. Religion. Now, the early Vedic Aryan were not able to explain the reason of natural forces and so they found their faith in surroundings. Because they were not able to understand the rain, sun, moon, they personified these natural forces. What does this mean? This means when they were not able to answer why it rains, why there are thunderstorms in the light of reasons, and they were not able to provide any rational explanation for these, they personified these natural forces as gods. See, Newton once said there exists gravity in every object that has mass. Now, the force that has fixed this gravity into the earth and other heavenly bodies, this is unknown, and this force is God. So, when he was not able to explain anything in the light of reasons, he also said that God is the force which fixed the gravity. So, similar thing happened with the Rigvedic people. When they were not able to explain the phenomena of these natural forces, they personified these natural forces as gods. They gave them human attributes or the living being attributes. They personified these things as God and gave them human attributes. Many poets and sages have composed lots of hymns in praise of gods and goddesses in Rig Veda. Now, we studied in the last lecture that Rig Veda consists of 1028 hymns which were there to praise gods and goddesses. They worship many gods, not in the fear of nature, but to gain nature's force. Example, they praise Indra so that Indra will inflict defeat upon the enemies of the Aryan. Indra was also known as destroyer of forts. So they were not in fear, but they wanted nature's favor, and that is why they praise these gods. All the natural phenomena such as sky, thunder, rain, air were believed to be guided by their presiding deities. That is, Indra was the god of rain, and that is how they believed that these deities used to control these forces. Natural devastation were taken to be an expression of their wrath. That is, they believe if there is a natural devastation, these gods must have put this wrath upon them. There were no place of worship like temple or object of worship like idols. This is very important point. There were no places of worship similar to Indus Valley civilization. We did not find any place of worship in Indus Valley civilization, and similar to that, we do not find any place of worship in the age of Rig Veda. And there were no idol worship since they personified these natural forces and gave them attribute of human beings. They did not have any figurative expression of these forces. Let's go through it once again. Early Vedic Aryans were not able to explain reasons of natural forces, so they found their faith in the surroundings. Because they were not able to understand rain, sun, moon, they personified these natural forces. They gave them human attributes. They worshipped their god not in fear but to gain nature's favor. Example, Indra, which was praised to inflict defeat upon the enemies of Aryan. All the natural phenomena such as sky, thunder, air, rain were believed to be guided by their presiding deities, like Indra is the rain god or Agni, which is fire god. While these natural devastations were taken to be the expression of God's wrath on Rigvedic people, there were no places of worship like temple or objects of worship like idol. Since they personified natural forces, they cannot give any figurative expression to these forces. So everything is clear up till now, I guess. Let's move on and have a look at few of the religious gods. Indra, also known as Purandar or breaker of forts. They played the role of warlords, leading the Aryan soldiers to victory against the demons. Before any war, the Aryans used to praise Indra. They used to sing hymn and recite various hymns to praise Indra so that the Indra inflicts defeat upon the enemies of Aryan. There are 250 hymns devoted to Indra in Rig Veda. Indra is the god of rain. That is, he was responsible for causing rainfall. Now, if he is responsible for causing rainfall, he also becomes important from the point of view of agriculture, which was dependent upon rain. So let's move on to the next god, which is Agni. 200 hymns are devoted to him. He is Agni, as the name suggests, is the god of fire. Now, where was the fire used in the age of Rig Veda? It was used in burning forest, cooking, And the most important thing, that is rituals. Cult of fire. It occupied a central place in India and Iran. No sacrifice to the god could be performed without the liberation or offering to the fire. And Agni therefore was considered to be the priest among the gods. Now let's look why it is so. He was considered as an intermediary between God and people. The sacrifices to God were carried via smoke to the sky, and thus this transmissions to God. So why it is called as the intermediary between God and people? Offerings to the Agni used to convert into smoke, and they used to transmit into the sky, which was carried to the god. This was the basic belief of Rig Vedic people. Let's move on to our next god, that is Varna. Varuna was the third most important god. He was the god of fire. He was supposed to be the upholder of natural order. It was considered that whatever happened in the world were because of desire of Varna god. Like, why upholder of natural order? Because if there is a flood or a tsunami, the natural order will get disrupted. Moving on to the next god, that is Soma. He is the god of plants. An intoxicating drink was made from plant brought from Himalayas and was named after Soma god. Marut, he is considered the god of storm. This Marut is something very different. He was the god of storm. See in the image, you can make a story like Maruti is coming out of this image, this storm. So you can remember it, or you can make any other of your stories, but it should be very concrete so that you can remember it. Let's just take a quick recap of Rig Vedic gods. Indra. Indra was the most important god. He was known as Purandar, or the breaker of forts. He played a major role of warlord, leading Aryan soldiers to the victory against demons. There are 250 hymns which are devoted to Indra in Rig Veda. Indra is the god of rain. He was responsible for causing rainfall. Now, rainfall is also important from agricultural point of view. That makes Indra the most important god of Rig Vedic period. Agni. There are 200 hymns devoted to it. Agni, as the name suggests, is the fire god. Now, fire was used for burning forest, cooking, and the most important thing, rituals. The cult of fire occupied central place in India, Iran during the Rig Vedic era. No sacrifice to the god could be performed without liberation or offerings to the fire. Now, various types of yajna were performed, and all of these required fire so that their offerings are carried from the man to the god. Now, how it was carried out? It was considered as an intermediary between god and people. The sacrifice to the gods were carried by smoke to the sky, thus the transmission to God. This was the basic belief. Moving on, Varna. He was the third most important god. He was the god of water. He was supposed to be the upholder of natural order. It was considered that whatever happened in the world were because of desire of Varna. Example, flood and tsunami. Soma was the god of plants. An intoxicating drink was made from the plant brought from the Himalayas, and it was named after Soma god. Soma and Sura were the two intoxicant drinks we studied in previous lecture. Marut was the god of storm. So let's move on. There were also female deities during the Rigvedic era. Their names are Aditi and Usha. But since we have studied that the Rigvedic age was patriarchy in nature, these female deities were not given importance, or they were not in prominence during the Rigvedic era. So now let's get on. What was the mode of their worship? How did they worship these gods? Apart from offering sacrifices, what were their modes? Recitation of prayers, offering of sacrifices was dominant mode. Prayers were important. Both collective and individual prayers were made. That is, prayers were offered in a group, and also people used to offer their prayers individually. Every tribe or clan had a specific god. Even today we have special gods for most of the tribes and clans. We call them Kul Devta. And this Kul Devta, origin of this theory of Kul Devta can be traced back to Rigvedic period. Whole clan offers prayer to the god in singing manner. Similarly, the whole clan offers sacrifice to the god. Sometimes even animals were sacrificed. You would have heard of the term Bhasbali. It can be traced to Rigveda. Now, cattle was very dear to these peoples, and when they offered these buffaloes and cattle as a bali to the god, they were of the opinion that the god will make their wishes come true. So let's move on. I hope everything up till here is very clear. Let's take a look at the economy of Rigvedic times. Rigvedic economy was primarily pastoral. We have read about this. Moving forward. They domesticated Pashu, which includes cattle, horses, dogs, pigs, etc., as opposed to Mriga. Who were these mrigas? Mrigas were the wild animals. Cattle was synonymous with wealth. What does this mean? The man who has more cattle was considered as a wealthy man, and a wealthy person was called as Gomat. Cattle obtained in raids were divided among family. Cattle found an important item of donation as it may have formed a part of Bali. What is this Bali? This is the voluntary offerings made by the people to their king, that is Rajan or Vishyapati, who was the head of Vishu. Cattle in general and cow in particular remains the medium of exchange. Now, since the cow or cattle was the medium of exchange, there was no currency, and no currency means the barter was still in use. The economy was based upon agriculture. When they permanently settled in North India, they began to practice agriculture. Not in a full-fledged manner, but the basic practice of agriculture started. With the knowledge and use of iron, they were able to clear forest and they were able to bring more land under cultivation. The people were well acquainted with sowing, harvesting, threshing, and various agro seasons. Now, cow was revered, but the cow and bulls were also sacrificed, as we have discussed. The most dearest thing when you sacrifice it to God, they were of the opinion that the God will make their wishes come true. The gift to the priest were in terms of number of cows and women slaves, but not in measurement of land. Since cow was the means of measuring wealth, the gifts to the priest were in terms of number of cows and women slaves, but not in measurement of land. Now, carpentry was another important profession, and the availability of wood from the forest cleared made the profession more profitable. Carpenter, what do they used to produce? They used to produce chariots and plowshare. Spinning was another important occupation. Cotton and woolen fabrics were made. Goldsmiths were active in making ornaments, and potters made various vessels for domestic use. So let's go through the economic aspects once again. Now, economy was primarily pastoral. They domesticated pashu, which includes cattle, horse, as opposed to mriga, which constituted wild animals. Now, cattle was synonymous with wealth. It means the more cattle a man has, the more wealthy he was considered. A wealthy person was called Gomat. The cattle obtained in the raids were divided among the families. Cattle formed an important donation, or it may have formed a part of Bali. Now, what is this Bali? Bali was the voluntary offerings made by the member of clan to their Rajan or Vishupati, which was the head of Vishyas. Cattle in general and cow in particular was the main medium of exchange during the Rig Vedic period. Now, since the cattle was the medium of exchange and not currency, we can say that the barter system was still in vogue. The economy was based on agriculture, though it was not practiced throughout the length and breadth, but they were aware of the agriculture. When they permanently settled in northern India, they began to practice agriculture. They were aware of the use of iron. They used iron to clear forests and bring more land under cultivation. The people were well acquainted with sowing, harvesting, threshing, and various agricultural seasons. Cow was revered, but they were also sacrificed. Gifts to priests were in terms of number of cows and women slaves, not in measurement of land. Now, carpentry was another important profession. The availability of wood from forests cleared made the profession profitable. The carpenter used to make chariots and plowshares of wood. Spinning was another important occupation, and cotton and woolen fabrics were made. Goldsmiths were active in making ornaments. Potter made various kinds of vessels for domestic use. Now let's take a look at the taxation system. Now the Rajan could not have an elaborate administrative machinery because the nature of Rigvedic economy. What was this nature? In this nature, there was no surplus agricultural produce, so the Rajan could not force their subjects to give involuntary donation or taxes. Now the economy in which surplus was very small, Rajan used to receive Bali. As we discussed, it is the voluntary offering to prince or to a god from conquered people. These tributes were neither regular nor stipulated, hence they cannot be called tax. Now since the Rajan do not have these elaborate taxes or not a regular income in the form of taxes, he could not maintain a long or regular standing army. The military functions were invested in Vedic assemblies, Vedhata. As we have studied, all the three persons, the Vajrapati, Kulpati or Grihapati, head of the family, and the Gramini functioned as military leaders. So these leaders of the land, home and gram, they were entrusted with military leadership also. A Rajan held the spies called spasas to keep an eye on the conduct of people. Ugra and Jiva Gribha were the two officials probably meant for dealing with crimes. Madhyamasi seems to have acted as a mediator in disputes. So let's go through it once again. Rajan could not have elaborate administrative machinery because the taxation system was not there. The tax used to be a voluntary offerings by the people in the form of bali. Since there was no rigid taxation system, the king could not maintain a regular standing army. The military functions were interested in Vedic assemblies like Vedhata, as we have studied. There were three persons like Vajrapati, Kulpati slash Grihapati, both are same, and Gramini, which were head of their respective land, home and gram. They were also interested with military leadership. Rajan held as spies. They were known as spasas to keep eye on the conduct of people. Ugra and Jiva Griba were the two official men for dealing with crimes. Madhyamesa seems to have acted as a mediator in case of disputes. So I hope everything is clear. Let's move on. The two pieces of clothes were normally worn. The upper garment was called Uttariya and the lower garment Antariya. So it's very easy to remember upper garment Uttariya. The rhymes also. The dress for the male and female did not differ much. Now householding. The Griha Sutta gives an idea of the manner and etiquettes of the later Vedic age. The guest or Atiti was welcome at that time, and special guests like Guru, King and father-in-law were given special treatment. This is the practice which is being followed today. Cleanliness was their passion. The society used to be very clean. Since there were lesser number of people, so they must have maintained a clean society. Let's move on to their health and hygiene. See, epilepsy was common and it affected children. What is epilepsy? This causes fits. Superstition and magical charms were employed to cure diseases. Let's move on. Craft and metallurgy. All kinds of craft were practiced. There were potters, chariot makers, carpenters, weavers, goldsmiths, etc. Copper was known as Ayas. Gold was known as Hiranya. Gold, Hiranya, copper, Ayas. Iron was also known as Shama or Krishna Ayas. So let's go through these three once again. Copper is known as Ayas, gold as Hiranya. Iron was also known as Shama or Krishna Ayas. I hope everything is clear up till now. Just keep these random facts in your mind. They can appear in your examination and you would not know what does this mean. If this Krishna or Shama Ayas appear in your exam, you should be able to make out that they were iron. Hiranya was gold. Now there were many sacrifices and rituals, but these three are very important. Rajasuya. This sacrifice conferred supreme power to the king. It was a kind of consecration ceremony. Ashwamedh Yagya. It authorized the king an unquestionable control over the area. As we all know, एक घोड़ा छोड़ दिया जाता था and whosoever used to stop this horse had to face the king. Vajpaya. It was a chariot race in which the royal chariot was to win the race against the kingmen. Now this personified the image of king. This elevated the Raja to a Samrat. So Rajasuya, consecration ceremony, laid supreme power to the king. Ashwamedh authorized the king an unquestionable control over the area in which that Ashwamedh or horse used to roam. Vajpaya, it was a chariot race in which the royal chariot was to win the race against their kingsmen. So let's go through some random facts. Satyamev Jayate, India's motto, comes from Mundak Upanishad. Atriya Brahman, which is a part of Rig Veda, establishes supremacy of Brahmins. Marriage of a widow to the brother or relative of a deceased. This whole process was known as Niyoga. Yavyavati is another name of Ravi, on the bank of which the battle of Ten King was fought. So I hope everything is very clear up till now. Let's move on and try to solve a few questions. Consider the following state about Rigvedic people. The society was patriarchal in nature during the period. Agriculture was dominant occupation of the people during the period. Gold and copper were widely used metal during the period. Which of the above statement is or are correct? So let's continue. It is a very simple question. Now they can change the name of gold and copper. We know that copper was known as Ayas and the gold was known as Hiranya. Now if they would have asked Hiranya and Ayas were widely used metals, you wouldn't have made sense. So that is why their names are important. Society was patriarchal in nature. It is well established fact. So it's true. Agriculture was dominant occupation of the people during the period. This is wrong, as we all know that they were pastoral. Gold and copper were widely used. Gold was known as Hiranya and copper was known as Ayas. iron was known as Krishnayas or Shamayas. Which of the option is true? 1 and 3, that is B. Option B is the correct answer. So I hope you understand all the points. For more such videos, log on to Scholars. Thank you.